so getting the proper training in, if you want to bear arms, great. Protecting the right to bear arms and doing whatever you have to do to protect yourself. Now, for people who are in a county where you have a great sheriff and you can communicate with your sheriff and you have the right sheriff and police support, that's great. But more and more, Alex, many of us are not, in that. 2 years ago, we had to organize to all the women, or I shouldn't say all the women, a whole bunch of us in the Hickory Valley Women's Club went out, bought guns, got training, got our permits. And, there was lots of jokes about everybody who was married to somebody in the Hickory Valley Women's Club had to sleep with a bulletproof vest. But, we haven't had any problems since then. So part of health in this environment is making sure you know how to protect yourself and your family, and that probably is going to require some training and some time. Then the third category after time and health is money. And there are so many things we can do with our money to completely shift, stop the drain from happening, because the inflation, Alex, is killing us. And it's funny because I constantly say to subscribers, why have your money in a money market account when you can put your money in tangibles, any non-perishable that you're going to use in the next 2 years? If you buy it now, given the inflation, we've seen food prices up 6% or more so far this year. So if you put it in a non-perishable and just let the value of that inventory go up, then in fact you don't have to pay tax on that capital gain, and you're getting a much better yield than you are in the money market. So there's a fundamental shift going on between tangibles and financial assets. Tangibles are just going to keep getting more and more valuable, and that has a radical impact on how we think of our investments. A lot of people say, you need to be diversified. And what they mean by that is you need to have different kinds of corporate securities in your brokerage account. That's nonsense. What you need to do is have money outside of the brokerage system and be much more invested in tangibles and carry much less debt, because debt has risks involved. I may be getting a higher yield on my investments than I'm paying on my mortgage, but there are real risks associated to having with debt, and now as people are losing their jobs, we're all discovering that. So it's very important, Alex, to get radical about lowering our overhead and radical about lowering our debt.
Getting rid of things we don't need, focusing on what's important, and finding out you didn't need most of this junk. What you really need is your freedom. Now, going back, though, comprehensive annual financial reports. We know this started in Chicago in the 40s. It was adopted nationwide in the 50s, a double set of books. County, city, school districts, water districts, universities, federal departments. They have a real set of books that are their investments, and then they have their supposed budget, which they always have a shortfall on, but that's only a small part of what they're doing. And now they've tricked the counties, the cities, the public pension funds, the private pension funds, and others to invest in the derivatives, in the banks, because they were getting a good return. Now we hear all these states...
Well, they thought they were getting a good return. They were getting a good return until they started to lose money.
Exactly, but that was the big setup. And so now we've got Bloomberg and others reporting the federal regulators are ordering the public pension funds to, quote, invest in failed banks. Since when can regulators order the heads of the pension funds to invest in, quote, failed banks? That sounds like a pretty bad investment.
Well, somebody comes to me and says, look, I've done everything I can to turn around the drain in my, on my own finances and my family. I've got extra time. I want to be involved in my community. The first thing I say is, the New World Order is pulling a ton of money out of your community through local, state, and government, through the pension funds. And if you can simply understand the game, bring transparency, and start to turn that around, the opportunities for wealth creation are absolutely phenomenal, Alex. And it's just so huge that no one can even imagine how big it is. But I agree with you. If you look at our state and local government finances, let's start with a simple one. The job engine in this country is small business, okay? So you have great local families with great local businesses, whether they're banks or stores or other operations in your community. They are the job engine. They are the thing that's keeping your community going in many respects. And if you look at the government bank deposits, the government investments, the government contracts, the government purchases, those are going not to those great local businesses, or the great businesses in the state that could it. They're going out to places like Wall Street. So I always use the example of the food stamp program here in Tennessee. We have counties in Tennessee, Alex, that have 25% unemployment rate, but meantime, we are outsourcing our data servicing and customer support on our state food stamp program. Are you ready for this? To J.P. Morgan Chase in India. So jobs that could be being done in Tennessee in counties where because these are digital, you can shoot these with telecommunications anywhere.
Exactly. Even the bureaucracy to deliver the welfare of dependency has been globalized to make sure that none of the money ever gets back to the community.
Right. So, and nobody connects the dots because that knowledge, those databases.
Well, here's another example I saw in the AP last week with a Texas case, and the legislature's complaining. They're taking existing roads, giving stimulus money to Centra of Spain to come in and put toll roads on it, and paying them stimulus money to put the toll road gates and license plate reading cameras in. And it came out that's illegal to use stimulus money for a toll road, but they just don't care. I mean, this is incredible.
Well, it's incredible. I mean, in my little town of Hickory Valley, there was a proposal to put up a cell tower at our city hall and use a government grant to do it when private parties were going to own it. But the government was going to pay, I think, for half of it. It's unbelievable. So, the money is clearly out of control. And I think, we're seeing incredible polls in the last 2 weeks. Rasmussen polls basically in election between Ron Paul and Obama today, they're basically even. And we've seen other polls, Alex, showing that people of all parts of the political spectrum agree more with the Tea Parties than they agree with any political party, Republican or Democrat. And so you're watching a very powerful unification start to happen around, Americans' belief in the Constitution and the importance of running the money clean, simple, basic issues. And now with April 15th behind us, nobody wants taxation without representation, which is really where we've gotten with the bailouts and now with the health care bill. And so I think you're starting to see a very powerful new consensus emerge in America, which is our real opportunity, saying, wait a minute, this system has no legitimacy. It has no legitimacy under the Constitution. It has no legitimacy under the law. And the funny thing, the conundrum, the weakest, you remember in Star Wars, was it Star Wars where they have the hole in the Death Star? The Death Star has one vulnerability.
Yes.
Let me tell you where the vulnerability is for the New World Order. The hole in their Death Star. And that is that as a bureaucracy, they have promoted all sorts of wonderful things, the most wonderful being the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and the second most wonderful being all sorts of fiduciary laws related to the money. And if you look at their operation, they are in direct and intentional violation to criminal standards on those two laws. And what is happening that's so powerful is the Tea Party group, the other people rising up and saying this is wrong, have embraced constitutional principles, the principles of the Declaration of Independence, and all the fiduciary laws related to money. And so you've got a very interesting switch of what the Chinese call the mandate of heaven, because the Tea Party and Ron Paul and his group have got the mandate of heaven according to hundreds of years old traditional American values and American law.
Let me just interrupt. I mean, to boil it down, the banks, the offshore corporations are engaged in a hostile corporate takeover. It's purely illegal. They raise our taxes for corporate welfare to be paid to them by the government. They also come in and buy off the city managers to invest most of our tax money in their derivatives. So that's another tax to the private banks. It's illegal. And now the people are finally waking up and going, wait a minute, a bunch of Madoff criminals, Ken Lay types, are running our society.
Right, and let me tell you what people are waking up to, because people have known it was criminal for a long time, and the question was always what we do about it. But they're coming to the same point I came to in 1998, which was, this thing is so perverted and is so without any, it's so empty of any meaning and values. I want nothing to do with it, and I would rather be out in the wilderness. I'd rather die in the wilderness than be part of the New World Order.
Stay there.